Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's H.H. Barnum webinar, Advancements in Power Distribution. My name is Cody Dawson, and before we get started, let me thank you for taking a moment to be with us here today. We'll be answering some power distribution questions at the end of today's presentation, but feel free to ask any specific questions by using the Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If we aren't able to answer your question by the end of the session, we'll be sure to follow up personally afterwards. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and a follow-up resources will soon be uploaded to the Barnum website. All right, let's dive in. In this highly competitive business environment, saving time and money is more important than ever before. If you've ever had trouble miswiring a connector or having to pull a super long bulk cable through a tray to try and troubleshoot, or invested way too much time running cable through conduit, you know that it can drain your time, your patience, and money. Coupled with the extensive time it takes to build, break down, and reassemble a machine, money is wasted with hard wiring every day. Barnum has a solution. Today, our goal is to highlight how a simplified power distribution model has helped our customers achieve real-time savings and real cost savings. To help explain this customer movement towards power distribution, we welcome Barnum's very own John Wilson and Scott Zimmerman. So without further ado, John, Scott, let's get started.
Thanks, Cody, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Scott Zimmerman.
And I'm John Wilson.
Today, we are going to discuss advancements in connectorized automation and touch on a new and unique technology.
Yep, connectors have had significant impact on nearly all forms of automated equipment. I would guess that nearly everyone listening to this webinar are familiar with having connectors on devices like sensors and valves, etc. These devices have all settled on standard connectors like M12, M8, 7/8 mini. Everyone uses them, everyone makes them. However, for one reason or another, companies have adopted many different methods for connecting to devices with higher power requirements like motors, drives, etc.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct, John. And I think it's important that we take a look and review some of these methods.
I agree. So let's get started.
So, John, the first one we're going to look at is traditional hard wiring.
That's right. Yeah, this is we call it conventional wiring for most methods. This is the method where if you had a motor, for instance, or any device that requires power, you traditionally just wire to that device all the way back to one central enclosure.
And that's kind of what we're looking at here with this first image.
That's right. This is a good example. If you had, the more devices you have, the more cables and really the more bundles you have, as you can see in your cable tray. So there's a lot of issues with doing it this method. This is very labor intensive.
Yeah, a lot of labor, right? You got to punch all those holes, run those cables through, land those wires.
And it's not very flexible. So if you had to add additional devices in the field, you'd ultimately have to run an extra cable all the way back and find another hole to punch and terminate it.
Yeah, specifically for that enclosure that we're looking at too, it doesn't even look like there might be room to add another cable or a punch.
Yeah, so you have to have design considerations at the front end when you design your equipment, whether you're going to need more devices or not afterwards. Initially, also, if you have a problem with the cable somewhere in that long run and it's maybe cut from, for one reason or another.
Yeah, troubleshooting nightmare.
It's a good troubleshoot nightmare, absolutely. And then as far as lengthy commissioning, if you built this equipment on your floor and we're having to ship this to your, where it's going to ultimately run at the end user, ultimately you have to unterminate those connections, roll up the cable to ship the devices, then just
long time for tear down and startup.
Absolutely. So people have kind of went away from this method as much as they can to go to connectors, much like they've done sensors and valves, etc.
Yeah. So the first connectorized solution that we're going to look at here, it's labor intensive still.
Yeah. So people have started adopting, using rectangular connectors to run power to these devices.
Yeah, mil spec,
M23 power. All of these devices, while they carry the current that is required for these devices, they all require assembly.
Yeah, and I mean, to order these, most of them, you have to order male pins, female pins, inserts, hoods. You have to spec out the cable beforehand to know what the size is going to be to fit into the back end of it. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, so this is a design and heavy connector. Customers have to design their connectors and usually get them made third party, but they're not an off-the-shelf cable to buy. Each one has to kind of reinvent the wheel as you go through it. And if you have a problem with the connector, if it's miswired, you have the traditional downtime that you'd have with conventional wiring.
There's still a lot of downtime, right? Soldering connections, double checking those, it's still an issue. So at the bottom of the page, we're looking at a molded solution now.
Yeah.
But the problem with some of these, like the 7/8 cable, is not a lot of current.
Yeah.
Right? You get 8 amps.
That's true. Yep. 7/8 mini that you would have doesn't have enough current. So some people have gone to other variations like the molded mil spec or perhaps the M16 or M40. Those are all good solutions while they're off the shelf traditionally with buying cable lengths that are pre-designed.
Yeah, essentially they're proprietary though, where there's not a ton of manufacturers that make them or have them.
That's true. That's the biggest problem with this is that you can design yourself into a corner.
Yeah, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket, relying on one, maybe two manufacturers to come through for you.
That's right. So when you're choosing a connectorized solution for these devices, really the point is to choose wisely. Find a standardized solution that's made from many manufacturers.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to talk about today, right? And that is essentially going to be called Mini Power.
That's correct. Yeah, Mini Power. It's not a new product that's around. Maybe some of these customers aren't familiar with it as much, but
there's probably a bunch that have used it.
More likely, there's a lot of customers that have already used it, and there's a lot of manufacturers that play with this product. They have the same standardization of product across the platform.
Yeah. So why don't we dive in and take a look at what the Mini Power offering is?
Yeah, perfect.
So the first thing I look at when I see the slide, John, is there's 3 cables in that left-hand corner, right? There's a black tip cable, there's a red tip cable, and then there's a cable with a large connector and a smaller connector. Can you kind of explain what these are?
Absolutely. Well, maybe first of all, with respect to Mini Power, there's really 2 series. There's an A series, which is 7/8 mini, and there's a D series, which is 1 3/8 mini. Now those both carry a higher power, as you can see in the first, in the lower quadrant there. For a 3-pin count on a 7/8 A series, it's 18 amps rated. And on a 1 3/8 D series, we're rated at 30 amps. So we have 2 different flavors going along. The cables, as you mentioned, are stocked in many lengths. You know, they're off the shelf. You can get them from anywhere from 1 meter, perhaps all the way up to 80 meters in length. And then for the different color lengths, really it's kind of a customer preference. They're not different mechanically.
Yeah, electrically they're the exact same, correct?
Exact same, just a different molding on the head.
Yeah, so you might use it to tell the difference between a standard 7/8, 8 amp cable or your single phase and 3 phase.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, complete customer preference. So customers will come up with their own ideas of how to use that cable. It's basically made to get attention. So if you had a cable running DC or AC, for instance, you want to basically, acknowledge that for the maintenance personnel.
Yeah. So looking at the receptacles, nothing too special. They're receptacles. The one thing I want to point out, which I think is always important, is the lengths and the quantities that we stock of them. Right? We stock strictly in 3-meter lengths.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. In fact, if you look in the catalogs will reference just maybe the 1 foot or half a meter length, but we stock them in 3 meters, and that's going to allow you, those that are building the panels to run those cables all the way back to termination points.
Yeah, and all the knockouts on those are all 1/2-inch NPT.
And that's a good point. Yep, they're 1/2-inch NPT, even though they're 1 3/8 mini. You're still dealing with a 1/2-inch NPT knockout.
Yeah, so you can standardize on motors, makes it a lot easier.
Yep, exactly. That's definitely an advantage.
So going through the accessories, there's obviously adapters and drops. I think we're going to touch on that on the next slide. But I guess the other thing I want to point out is we do offer locks. Now these are not required, but it's an option, something that you could use that will lock onto the nut, gives you a padlock option. So if you want to lock 2 cables together so you can't unscrew them under power, or if you could essentially put it on a single-ended cable so no one will plug in to that port.
That's correct. Yeah, that's another customer preference. We have a whole breadth of products that are available. That's what makes this product perhaps unique from like the mil-spec connectors. There's a number of accessories that we can accessorize with on this. Makes it a complete product offering.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, not a new cable, not a new product, but our stock is huge on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a nice stock list that we send to customers that will allow customers to see the lengths that we stock. And again, from 1 meter, 80 meters. So if you're doing a layout and you're concerned about, hey, I don't have a cable that's going to fit this, then you should check with Barn. We're more likely we'll be able to help you.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the Mini Power design.
Excellent. So what we have in this design is in this particular example, we have 2 motors that we need to get power to. And conventionally, if you were wiring this either with connectors or even just for conventional wiring, you would have to wire each one of these motors back to the cabinet.
Yes, you'd have 2 cables, 2 knockouts, 2
Yeah.
wires of LAN.
The more motors you have, the more cables running back. So the unique thing you can do with mini power is that we have accessories like those tees and drops, as you described in the other slide.
Yeah, so traditionally we start with a female receptacle, go into a double-ended male to female cable, and then go to one of those drops. Now that cable and that receptacle is going to be that D size, right? So we can carry 30 amps through that line.
Absolutely. I mean, it could be the D size. It's 30 amps rated, so you can carry a larger amount of cables and more devices through that 30 amps. And then you get to go those T's, which the T's will drop it to a 7/8 mini, and which will carry 18 amps.
Yeah, then we can go to that disconnect and then ultimately down to the motor. So in a scenario where we need to add a device, say another motor in this situation, can you kind of walk us through what we would need to add this motor?
And that's the beauty of this product is this gives us the ultimate expansion. So it's modular. So we have an extra T there. We can add a double-ended cable and then go to maybe a drop of another T and then drop down from the 7/8 to that unit. And if we have to add another motor, even after this point, we have the option to add on at that T or just cap it on.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to point out in this scenario, right, we use the 2-piece solution from the drop to another double-ended cable to the motor starter disconnect box. But we do offer a T that has a molded cable into it. So if it's close enough in proximity, you can order one component and plug it in and be good.
Yep, there's a whole breadth of accessories. We have from 1 3/8 to 7/8 cables molded, even just conversion connectors that can mount on a T itself or through the T as we show in this example. So the key to this product is that we have on the shelf molded cable assemblies of various lengths. So you have any lengths that we mentioned before, even if it's a long length run, don't be afraid to ask us. We more than likely have them in stock.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. So the next product that we want to discuss today is, again, not a new product, but it's M12 Power.
Awesome.
So M12 Power, it's been around a while, right? I mean, everyone on this call may not have heard of it yet, but it's been around for about 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been selling it successfully for many years. What M12 Power has done is conventionally you look at an M12 connector and you're carrying about 4 amps of power through it. This M12 Power is capable of handling 16 amps of power.
Wow.
So this is a great alternative. It's standard. Many manufacturers make it as well. So you're not designing yourself into a corner when you consider this product.
Yeah, let's take a look at the M12 Power offering. So when I look at this slide again, the cables kind of stick out to me, right? There's a couple different options here. Looks like at the bottom, there's a couple different coatings. Can you kind of explain what the applications would be and where we would use each of them?
Yeah, so with M12 Power, where there's 4 different coatings, the coatings represent the keyway of those connectors. That way you can't connect one version to another version. With the DC version, we essentially settled on an L code and a T code. And you're going to find these on blocks like IO blocks that are in the field right now, or just carrying DC, but we can carry 16 amps of power, which is very significant.
Yeah.
And then AC power, we have 16 amps for the S code or a K code. We see a lot more people using S code, T code, and L code today.
Yeah, the K code is common, but it is a product offering that we have.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess the other thing I want to point out, you mentioned that there's coding and there's keyways, so they won't plug into each other. But I think it's important that all of the coatings on the bottom, we didn't color those to help you, I guess, look at the differences. They are actually physically colored that way.
Absolutely.
So that way you can look at the cables without looking down the barrel and being able to tell the difference between what they are.
Yeah, this helps if you happen to have an L code and an S code running through the same cable, you can actually look at the insert color and know that, hey, this one doesn't go with that one. So yeah, it's another way to differentiate, which is very powerful. Yeah, so we have these in long lengths cables. They're all tray rated cable as well.
Yeah.
So up to 80 meters in stock at Barnum. So this is a great alternative if you were considering it, maybe looking at lighting applications and things like that nature.
Yeah, and again, receptacles similar to the mini power stuff. We stock them in long lengths, and we have a ton of them.
Yeah, and also with these accessories. So if you're using IO blocks that are traditionally 7/8 mini, they now make L code cables that convert to 4-pin minis or even 5-pin mini connectors. So if you have some of this legacy 7/8 power or 7/8 connectors out there for these IO blocks,
you can adapt to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's not new technology. All the manufacturers, Lumberg's newest IO link block is an L code. Balluff's newest IO link block is a T code. There's other manufacturers that are coming out with IO-Link blocks and new network blocks that have M12 power.
Yeah, I think you're going to see more and more of these connectors being used every day. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking about products and showing what options we have and talking about applications, but let's take a look at some real world applications.
All right, let's do it.
So the first one we're looking at, obviously, conveyors, which the mini power product, it's essentially made for. I would be shocked if there was a conveyor manufacturer that hasn't used this at some point.
I agree. Yeah, this is primarily the primary application for mini power. This is bringing power to motors and drives in the panel, or out of the panel in the field. And you can see by this example how powerful it'd be. You could have a single, just like our example shown, your D series through the conveyor, and they make individual drops to the motors.
Yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about this is you can see where that T is positioned. If you need to remove that piece of conveyor, add a piece of conveyor, it's essentially plugging a new cable in or unplugging a cable, screwing a new one in. So commissioning, decommissioning your equipment is huge.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very modular design. So to go along with conveyors, we're going to look at motors, VFDs, and what we're looking at here is a lens of VFD that's quick connect.
Yeah, this is a great example. What you're starting to see more and more, the trend is customers are starting to put more devices in the field. They're taking them out of the main cabinet, put them in the field. So this is another way to do that. We've got a variable frequency drive that allows us to put power connections in the field, and we could bring a power in and power to our motor. Not only that, but we're able to bring network communication to the same unit too. So whether it be Ethernet or Profinet or even IO-Link, we can actually pass to this device. So out of your main cabinet, you're essentially running one communication cable and one power cable all the way along the conveyor.
Yeah, and this motor starter with the disconnect from NoArc, this is similar to the box that we were showing on the mini power design.
Absolutely, yeah. So this allows you to zone those motors and turn them off as needed if you had to service them, for instance. And we make this particular motor starter in many different styles and shapes.
Depending on your horsepower of your motor.
Yep, and then we can add either both M12 power or even mini power connectors for that as well.
Yeah, so there's a ton of applications that we could go over. The last one, I guess, that we'll touch on, which we think is a good opportunity for it, is lighting.
Absolutely, yeah. So with lighting in particular, it's not necessarily these LEDs require a lot of current, but customers are trying to cascade these lights all the way down the path. So we got to carry a larger cable.
Yeah. For example, if in that picture on the right, a lot of times people will add a fan.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a 15 amp circuit that you need. So by using the mini power cable or the M12 power cable, you can run it in line and you're good.
Yep, you're able to achieve that rating right through that as well. And you can see that design there shows a conduit connection on those lights, just for example. But if customers were to use a M12 or mini power through that, they would be able to mount them. Yeah,
mount and go. You wouldn't have to bend pipe, run it through. If a cable breaks or goes bad or a light breaks, to replace that, it's a lot of work. You might need a certified electrician. If you're using M12 power, if you're using mini power, none of that's required.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
So the last thing we're going to touch on today is kind of what we were saying earlier with a unique and newer technology, and it goes along with the M12 power product, but it's called an M12 hybrid or a Y cable.
Yeah.
And it's not distributing high voltage, but it's doing something a little different.
Yeah, this goes along with it. M12 power, as you said. This is called a Y code, and this unit actually has 9 conductors through the cable. So it carries 5 for power and 2 twisted pairs for communication. So this is giving you power and Ethernet, not power over Ethernet.
Yeah, good point.
To your systems. So this is a growing product. I think this is going to be a great product coming up. It's not necessarily new, and it's also not necessarily a Lumberg exclusive product either.
Yeah, there's a couple different manufacturers that make this, right?
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at what the M12 hybrid concept would be in a traditional application.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so this is kind of showing a great example. With this example, you see we have some accessories. We have some T splitters, for instance, and what that does is basically inject those 2 cables together. So we're bringing Ethernet and power, and then we get to the hybrid Y code, which now carries 12 amps, which I'm not sure I mentioned before. through to the first IO block, and then you can pass it through.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So those blocks traditionally are rated for 9 amps. When that cable runs through, is it derating the cable?
Not at all, yeah. So it actually passes that high current through that without derating it through each device.
Yeah.
And so in addition, so applications where this is very powerful and very successful would be think of like robots, where you got to have a confined space for the cable to run.
Yeah, robot dress packs would be huge, right? It's always how many cables are running through the dress pack. If you can limit that down into one cable, that's huge. And then to go along with that block, right? We look at it, instead of having a 7/8 connector on there, or even two connectors with a communication cable and a power cable. I mean, your footprint of that block is shrinking.
Absolutely.
And that's huge for end effectors.
Absolutely.
Weight matters.
So now you can get these blocks that can carry one connection for both power and network, and make that block much smaller. So yeah, put them in confined areas. So, real estate is very valuable on this equipment. So that's where I think this product's going to be very powerful for the future. And I think we're going to see this product grow more and more as years to come.
I completely agree. And that's going to wrap it up for our presentation today. And I encourage everyone who's listening to please reach out to your Barnum salesman regarding designs, layouts, cross references for part numbers, etc. So I'm going to throw it back to Cody.
Great stuff, guys. John, Scott, thank you for sharing your insight with us today. Before we go, let's just take a couple minutes to answer some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like one of the questions that came in is how is it that you can do 16 amps out of an M12 cable? John, do you want to cover that?
Yeah. That's we get that question often. I mean, it's crazy. People that are familiar with 7/8 mini and power in their IO blocks know that they can either get 8 amps. Sometimes people try to bump it up to 10 amps, but how come that's 16 gauge and now we have a 16 gauge M12 and we're getting double the amount of current? Well, a lot of it, I'm not getting too technical, but a lot of it has to do with that insert. The insert has protection against that arc, and not to mention the pins that they use are solid versus the ones that you have in your conventional 7/8 are hollow. So it's been tested, it's approved for 16 amps.
Yeah.
So we're glad to accept it.
And so this next question, it sounds like it's coming from someone who has had some issues.
Okay.
So that's a good thing. And does Barnum stock mini power cables? Simple as that. Does Barnum stock mini power cables?
So, man, I tell you what, we do stock a lot of mini power cables. And that's been a good thing because, again, this product's not new. We have a lot of competitors out there, and we know a lot of our competitors do not stock well. And Barnum in general is the largest stocking distributor of cables probably in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So
I think Cody should actually distribute and probably to the sales guys, and the sales guys should distribute like a little cheat sheet of showing what our stock is and what we commonly stock.
I agree, because very beneficial when we have these lengths, and that's where customers get kind of scared is, hey, I got to go to 50 meters. I got 150 feet stretch here. Yeah. Is there going to be a cable available when I need it? And we know that, cables in general are probably the last thing remembered on a job. But when you need it, you need them. So Barnum has been a great resource. So yeah, to answer that question, I would definitely put this to the test. We stock a lot of these cables and we move them out daily.
Yeah. So the last question that we have here is, are your products interchangeable with other brands in regards to the 7/8 power and the 1 3/8 power from other manufacturers?
And that kind of probably goes along with that last question too, because we're able to cross-reference. So yeah, completely interchangeable. Not only that, but the M12 is interchangeable. So we designing ourselves into a corner using some odd size. You won't do that. You're going to not get stuck. So heaven forbid we don't have stock. You'll have other options as well. But our 7/8 and 1 3/8. And one thing maybe to mention too is even in the 7/8, there is no keyway difference. So if you were using a 3-pin 7/8 mini that was like your standard version from using for whatever power of 8 amps or 10 amps.
Yeah.
Well, our 7/8 mini that's 18 amps does plug into it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's completely interchangeable with other brands, and that should be a good thing for everyone that wants to design with this equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good questions, guys. Thank you both again. Obviously, H.H. Barnum believes that the future of machine power lies in distributed mini and M12 power. As such, as John and Scott mentioned, Barnum is committed to building an inventory of available product here in Brighton, Michigan, to help support our customers. For machine builders, that means you can assemble with an assortment of different cable lengths so that your cabling is best fit for your exact machine layout. For end users, that means they can easily stock different cable lengths in their own crib, significantly reducing downtime and eliminating the need for a certified electrician. If you would like to investigate a distributed power model further, contact your Barnum salesman today. We can set up an in-person or virtual meeting to review your current layout and evaluate which products in Barnum's distributed power portfolio work best for you. Your Barnum salesman can bring in John or Scott or really any of our Barnum power distribution specialists. We work closely with customers all the time to design and implement these awesome time-saving and cost-saving solutions, and we can do the same for you. If you're already using mini power from another manufacturer, reach out to your salesman with a copy of those part numbers and give Barnum a shot to cross over to lumber. There is a very good chance that we have your solutions in stock and can get you significant cost savings by switching over. Or if you just like a free sample of one of the M12 power cables to see what the buzz is all about, give your Barnum salesman a call. As Scott mentioned, we'll be sending out a copy of our commonly stocked distributed power products list within a day or two of this webinar. We appreciate your time today and the opportunity to show how Barnum can help you and your company save time, reduce headaches, and save money with distributed power. Thank you again for attending this webinar and for your continued support of H.H. Barnum and our suppliers. Stay tuned for more Barnum webinar topics in the coming weeks. In the meantime, be well and stay safe.